Guys, I'm 45 years old, right? Like, if I want to stick something up my butt at this point in life, like, there's probably not a lot left. There's not a lot of meat left on the bone in terms of options for me, in terms of law enforcement or working in high levels of society. Oh, the things that we have to talk about in 2023, 2024. Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Today we are going to ask and answer a question. Can officers be involved in Onlyfans? I know. Hey, listen, if you're like most security guards and you're making that bare minimum pay, that minimum wage, you're struggling to pay your car note, you're struggling to pay your mortgage. I mean, you might think to yourself, like, you know what? Hey, fuck it. And when I say fuck it, I mean literally fuck it. But there are some things to consider before we get started. The reason why I even brought this up is because here in Portland, well, not Portland per se, although I'm sure there are a ton of police officers and sheriff's deputies that have OnlyFans accounts here in Portland. And if I find out, I'm going to subscribe only for research purposes. But there was one in an area that's close to Portland called Yamhill County, and he is in a ton of hot water. Let's bring in the news story so you guys can see what I'm talking about.
Today in Yamhill County, a sheriff's deputy appeared in court not as a function of his job, but as a defendant. Fox 12's Ezra Kaplan was in court as the deputy was arraigned on a dozen charges, including allegedly explicit behavior while in uniform.
He used to work right over there at the sheriff's office, but today, former deputy David Mills showed up here at court to face charges. A sheriff's deputy booked into custody by his own colleague. David Richard Mills was arraigned today on 12 charges connected to allegations of creating pornography while in uniform, including public indecency and first-degree official misconduct.
In this case, the state is alleging a public safety officer while in uniform violated the public trust by creating and posting pornography online for profit.
The indecent photos and videos he is alleged to have created were posted both on X, formerly known as Twitter, and Onlyfans, a subscription-based website that is primarily used by sex workers to produce adult content. All charges against him are misdemeanors. Following his arraignment today, Mills was taken into custody and processed at the Yamhill County Courthouse. The judge allowed him to be released on his own recognizance, but with one of the conditions being that he is not allowed to be seen publicly, including online wearing any law enforcement insignia. The court documents filed last week graphically allege a pattern of sexually explicit behavior dating back to January 2022. They include allegations of public indecency inside of a public building and masturbating in his patrol car and posting a video of the act online. The Benton County District Attorney is serving as a special prosecutor in the case to avoid potential conflicts of interest with Mills' former colleagues.
Deputy Mills was a highly respected law enforcement officer. However, the state places a significant amount of public trust in their public safety officers, and almost all of law enforcement perfects that trust with their lives every single day. In this case, the state is alleging a public safety officer while in uniform violated that public trust by creating and posting pornography online for profit. With the resignation of David Mills this morning, his ability to violate that public trust has been greatly reduced.
Now, the Yamhill County Sheriff's Department does confirm that David Mills no longer works there. And today in court, he did not enter a plea of guilty or not guilty. That will come when he's back in court next month. In Yamhill County, Ezra Kaplan, Fox 12 Oregon.
Now, before we go any further, let me just say this: fair use, fair use, fair use, fair use, fair use. I am utilizing this broadcast to educate current and former security guards who might be considering starting a career in OnlyFans, because this is something that you have to consider. We are in 2023, approaching 2024. The idea around sex work, the sex work industry, it has changed over time. There are people from all walks of life, specifically after the COVID pandemic, where people have gotten into utilizing OnlyFans as a viable way of making money. And to be 100% honest, guys, listen, from what I hear, allegedly, It is good money. Now, I want to talk about 5 things that you should consider before you decide to take this step. If you're going to do this as a security guard. Now, we can all assume, I'm not a police officer, I'm not an attorney, so I don't know, what the legal standing is in terms of whether or not a person can do this while working as a police officer. Clearly there is an issue, because not only has this person been terminated from his job, he is looking at some actual charges for the things that he has done, and I'm assuming while working in the capacity of officer filming for this OnlyFans account. But if you're going to work as a security guard, the question comes up, hey, does anyone give a shit if I do this as a security guard? Well, you might think to yourself, the answer is no, because you're not necessarily working in law enforcement. You're not, working at behest of a municipality or a city. But if you are a certified security guard, you are working in the capacity of a state certified agent. So the question comes up, can you do this? And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know. But I do have 5 things that I think would be very important for you to consider before going down that road. Number 1, does it violate the state ethics charter? Here in Oregon, there is an ethics statement that you have to sign. Without having it directly in front of me, I think that it talks about, moral fitness. It talks about being a good person. And unfortunately, we are still in a society where when it comes to sex work, that is on a very subjective scale. I personally do not like to hoe hate. I don't like to slut shame. I am not a prude in any way, shape, or form. And I like porn as much as the next person. However, I'm not the guy calling the shots, right? More than likely, it's going to be somebody who has a 180-degree different view of things than I do. So before going down that road, if security is something that you enjoy, if it's a lifestyle that you appreciate working in, if you want to continue serving in that capacity, I would read that charter, if there is any, and I would seek out that information and make sure that you're not violating some sort of code of ethics by getting into it. If you're at a point in your life where you're thinking that you're going to put yourself out there and you're going to go down this road, if you're going to expose yourself, and I say that no pun intended, you should be comfortable enough to have this conversation. Reach out to your governing body, reach out to the people that certify your security license and say, hey, look, this is something that I'm interested in or thinking about doing. Would I be violating something at the state level? Because it's better to ask beforehand than to be in a situation where you're on the news and you're looking like this guy and you're finding yourself in a bad situation. Number 4, I would say, does it violate your terms of employment? Now, you should be given a company handbook. You should be given something that talks about the expectations of working for that company, of being a part of that company. And likely just similar to what you're doing with your state, you should be looking into whether or not taking these actions or working in this industry would be something that would get you terminated from your company. You might think that they wouldn't care. You might find out, unfortunately, well after the fact that they do care, and this is something that they don't want to be a part of or be attached to. The reason for that is that it could become a distraction for your company, or it could become a distraction for your work. You have to remember, not only do you answer to the company that you're hired to, not only do you answer to the state that certifies your license, you also answer to the contract holder. What if you're working in a place that is a religious environment? What if you're working in a place that doesn't have the same views on sexuality or self-expression that you might personally have? If this kind of lifestyle or what you're doing comes to light and that becomes an issue for your company, it becomes an issue for the contractor that you're working for, best believe, as the low man on the totem pole, and all of us in a security capacity, if we're doing anything that brings any sort of shame or any sort of condemnation to the company that we work for or the contractor, they will cut us. So make sure that whatever you're doing is not going to be a distraction or come up and be an issue. If you're working here in Portland, for the most part, that wouldn't be a problem. You're working in Kentucky, you're working in Arkansas, you're working in some of these southern areas, and you're doing something like OnlyFans, that could be a problem. Number two, are you doing anything that will be an issue moving forward? What do I mean by that? If you want to become a police officer, if you want to become a sheriff's deputy, if you want to join the military, if you want to do something at the corporate level, will your involvement in this type of lifestyle, you having, images or videos or anything out there of you doing something in this capacity, is that going to, no pun intended, bite you in the ass, right? You want to make sure that that's Oh, sorry. That was funny. You want to make sure that this is not a situation that causes problems for you if there's something that you want to do down the road. Guys, I'm 45 years old, right? Like, if I want to stick something up my butt at this point in life, like, there's probably not a lot left. There's not a lot of meat left on the bone in terms of options for me, in terms of law enforcement or working in high levels of society. So I could probably go ahead and get it in and make that money at this point. But for some of you younger guys, you might want to be more cautious with what you do with your time, or what you do in terms of going down that road if you have aspirations for moving up in life. All right, number one, is the money worth it? Now, look, I know that a lot of you guys don't make very much money. I get it. And if you are in a situation where you can bring in quite the bag by doing something like this, like, God bless you and more power to you. Because if you're working a $10, $12, $15 an hour site, you're working unarmed, you're bored, you're opening doors, you're locking doors, maybe this is a better avenue for you. I don't know what your options are out there, but at the end of the day, make the most money while you can, where you can. And if that happens to be OnlyFans, then so be it. Because for the most part, a lot of you guys, you're not making that much money doing security anyway. So these are just things to think about, things to, just kind of swirl around in your head. Maybe, ask yourself these questions. But at the end of the day, you're an adult. You can do what you want to do. You just have to ask yourself, is it worth it? Is this the best decision for me? But I can't answer that. Only you can answer that. And for this guy, I hope it was worth it, because at the end of the day, he gave up his career. There's not a lot of ways to go. So he might have to really lean into this and just go full board 100% with his OnlyFans venture. So just 5 things to think about before you guys go down that road. What are your thoughts? Have you ever given the thought of doing something like that? Would you ever do something like that? Does it matter what the security industry or your potential future thinks about something like that? Or would you take the risk and move into this line of work? I want to hear your comments, your feedback, your thoughts. And as always, I welcome all the dialogue. Guys, as always, please watch your 6 and be great, okay?